The forest was silent except for the sound of the man's boots crushing leaves on the ground. He walked slowly, his eyes sharp, his hand near the knife on his belt. The sun was setting, and golden light fell through the tall, alien trees. Strange, flowers glowed faintly, giving the woods a dreamlike look. But the man knew beauty often hid danger. He had been traveling alone for many years. His name was Daniel, a human wanderer on an alien planet. He had no home, no family, and no reason to stay in one place. The only thing he carried was his backpack, his weapons, and the heavy weight of memories. People called him cold, but inside his heart was still broken. As Daniel walked deeper into the forest, he stopped suddenly. There was a sound, faint and soft, not the cry of an animal, not the hiss of a predator. It was a voice trembling, almost too weak to hear. He turned his head and listened harder. "Be my dad. I'll behave." The words floated through the trees like a ghost. Daniel froze, his chest tightening. He thought for a moment it was his imagination. He had lost his own daughter long ago. Was his mind playing tricks on him? But then the voice came again, a little louder. "Please, be my dad." Daniel's hand gripped his knife, but he moved carefully toward the sound. He stepped over roots, pushed aside glowing leaves, and followed the voice. At last, he saw her. She was small, maybe 10 years old. Her skin was bright blue, glowing softly in the dim light. Her hair was silver white, falling like silk to her shoulders. Her eyes, huge and shining, stared at him with fear and hope mixed together. Her clothes were torn, her bare feet scratched by the forest floor. She looked like she had been walking for days. The girl stood, trembling, clutching a small pendant on her chest. When she saw Daniel, her lips quivered. "You are human," she whispered. "You are not like them, please. Take me with you." Daniel's throat felt dry. He had faced alien beasts, soldiers, and storms. But the sight of this little girl nearly broke him. She was not just asking for shelter. She was begging for something far greater. Family. "Who are you?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "Why are you alone in the forest?" The girl lowered her head, her silver hair hiding her face. "My name is Lyra," she said softly. "My stepmother banished me. She told me I was worthless. She told me to die here." Her small hands shook as she held the pendant tighter. "I have nowhere to go, please." "Be my dad. I'll behave, I promise." Daniel's chest burned with old pain. He remembered holding his own daughter years ago. He remembered the fire, the night he lost her, the moment his life fell apart. He had closed his heart since then. But now this child, this alien girl, was asking for the same thing his daughter once did: protection. He wanted to turn away. He wanted to tell himself it wasn't his problem. But the look in her eyes chained him to the ground. She was alone, afraid and unwanted. If he left her, she would not survive the night. Before Daniel could speak, the forest shifted, leaves rustled, branches cracked, and glowing eyes appeared. In the shadows, strange low growls echoed all around. Predators had caught the scent of weakness. Lyra gasped and stepped closer to him, her tiny hand grabbing his sleeve. "They come at night," she whispered in fear. "They will eat me if you leave me here." Daniel's hand moved to his blade, his body tense. He looked at the girl, then, at the glowing eyes in the darkness. He had a choice: walk away and keep his life simple, or protect her and bring danger upon himself. The predators stepped closer, their teeth glinting in the dim light. Lyra pressed against him, whispering, "Again, be my dad. Please, I'll behave." Daniel took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt the old fire return to his chest. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes hard and focused. If the forest wanted to take this girl, it would have to take him too. The night grew darker, the growls louder. Daniel stood tall, the girl behind him. And in that moment, a broken wanderer began to feel like a father again. The forest was alive with danger. Dozens of glowing eyes moved in the shadows, circling Daniel and the little alien girl. Low growls echoed between the tall trees and the ground shook with heavy footsteps. Lyra pressed herself against Daniel's side, her small fingers gripping his sleeve so tightly they trembled. Daniel stood firm, his knife gleaming. In his hand, he had faced death many times before, but this time was different. Now there was a child behind him looking at him as if he was the only wall between her and the darkness. And in truth he was. A massive creature stepped into the light, its body covered in black scales that shimmered faintly under the glow of the forest plants. Its jaws were wide, filled with sharp teeth dripping with thick saliva. Behind it more shapes moved, hungry predators that had followed the scent of weakness. Daniel narrowed his eyes, calculating every move. He could fight, yes, but alone. Against so many? It was madness, still his instincts told him to protect the girl. If he left her, she would be torn apart in seconds. But if he stayed, he might die with her. The girl whispered softly, her voice shaking. "Don't leave me. Please, you're all I have." Her silver hair shone faintly, her wide, glowing eyes staring up at him with desperate hope. Something inside Daniel cracked. He had lost his own child once, and the pain of that night still haunted him. Now fate had placed this fragile creature before him, asking him to choose. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. His voice was calm, steady, even though his heart pounded like a war drum. The creatures moved closer, forming a half circle around them. Daniel crouched low, knife ready, eyes sharp. The first beast lunged, snapping its jaws toward him. Daniel dodged quickly and slashed across its neck, black blood spraying onto the leaves. The beast screeched and fell. Writhing on the ground, Lyra gasped, covering her mouth. But before Daniel could breathe, two more predators leapt from the shadows. He spun, striking one in the eye, but the other slammed into his side, knocking him to the ground. His knife fell from his hand, clattering onto the dirt. The monster's teeth snapped inches from his throat. "Daniel!" Lyra screamed, her voice breaking. She fell to her knees, clutching her pendant, tears running down her glowing blue cheeks. Her body shook as if something deep inside her was waking. Her hands began to glow with a strange light, soft but powerful. In fear and desperation, she pushed her hands forward. A sudden burst of energy exploded from her palms. The predator was thrown backward, crashing into a tree with a sickening thud. The other creatures stopped for a moment, startled by the strange power. Daniel crawled up, snatching his knife, his eyes wide in shock. What did you do?" he asked, breathing hard. Lyra stared at her glowing hands, trembling. I don't know, it just happened," she whispered, her voice full of fear. Her glow faded, and she looked smaller, weaker, as if the power had drained her strength. Daniel wiped blood from his cheek and pulled her close. The forest fell quiet again, the creatures melting back into the shadows. They were not gone, but they were afraid now, keeping their distance. Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily. He had survived battles before, but never like this, never with a child whose touch could create such strange power. He looked at her carefully, his eyes sharp. "Why did your stepmother send you away? Tell me the truth," he demanded. Lyra lowered her gaze, tears falling again. "She says I am cursed," she whispered. "She says I carry something dangerous inside me, something that must never be seen. If people know, they will kill me." Her small voice trembled with every word. Daniel clenched his jaw. He knew cruelty when he saw it, but this was worse. This child was not cursed. She was gifted, and her stepmother feared it. Now Daniel understood. The girl was not just a lost child, she was a target, hunted by beasts and maybe even her own people. He sat beside her on the damp forest floor, breathing slowly. He looked at her tiny hands, still faintly glowing, and then into her wide, pleading eyes. He had a choice, a real one, and he knew it would change everything. He could walk away and continue his lonely life. He could leave her here and tell himself it wasn't his responsibility, but deep in his heart, he knew he could not do it. The ghosts of his past would never let him rest. This time he would not fail. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and strong. "You stay with me now," he said firmly. "No matter what comes, you are not alone." Lyra's lips trembled and she threw her arms around him. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something warm break through the cold walls of his heart, the sound of her small voice whispering, "Thank you, Dad," nearly brought him to tears, but the peace lasted only for a moment. In the distance, strange lights flickered through the forest, bright, mechanical, and unnatural. Daniel's eyes hardened. Those were not animals. Those were patrols, soldiers, hunting for something, or someone. And Daniel knew at once they were looking for her. The night grew colder and the forest was no longer silent. Strange lights moved between the trees, glowing white and red, steady like machines. They were not the wandering lights of fireflies, but the harsh beams of alien patrols. The stepmothers. Soldiers were searching, and Daniel knew it was for the girl. He crouched low, pulling Lyra down with him. "Quiet," he whispered, his eyes scanning the forest. Lyra's breathing was sharp and quick, her small hands clutching his arm. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and Daniel quickly pulled the hood of his jacket over her head. "Don't let them see you," he said. The girl nodded, her lips pressed tight to keep from making a sound. Daniel moved carefully, every step slow, every breath measured. He knew soldiers were worse than predators. Predators killed for food, but soldiers killed for orders, and orders had no mercy. As they crept through the thick trees, Daniel's mind kept racing. Why would a stepmother banish a child into a forest full of predators? Why send patrols to hunt her down afterward? The answer was clear. The girl was more than a child. She was a secret, one that powerful people wanted buried. When they reached a clearing, Daniel stopped. He could see the patrols more clearly now. Strange armored figures moved in pairs, their armor shining black under the moonlight. Each one carried weapons that hummed with energy. They were not looking for a wild beast. They were searching carefully, shining their beams into every shadow. Lyra tugged Daniel's sleeve, her voice trembling in a whisper. "They will find us, they always find me." Daniel looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." They slipped away from the patrols and found a small cave hidden behind hanging vines. Inside, it was damp and cold, but it was shelter. Daniel lit a small fire with his flint, keeping the flames low. The warmth spread slowly, and Lyra curled, close to it, wrapping her arms around her knees. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the firelight, and Daniel studied her face. She was young, fragile, and frightened, but there was something else too. She carried herself with a quiet strength, the kind born from suffering. Daniel saw it in her eyes, the same look he had seen in soldiers who had lost everything. She was a child, but she had already walked through shadows most adults never knew. He handed her a piece of dried meat from his pack. She took it carefully, almost like she expected him to snatch it away again. "Eat," he said simply. She bit into it, chewing slowly, then whispered, "No one ever shared food with me before?" Daniel's heart tightened at her words. He did not speak, but he thought of his own daughter again, how he had once shared campfires with her, how she would smile and laugh, filling the night with warmth. That warmth had died with her, but now this girl stirred it back to life. When Lyra finished eating, she leaned closer, her voice small. "Why did you save me?" she asked. Daniel stared into the fire, the flames flickering in his eyes. "Because I couldn't watch you die," he answered. It was the truth, and yet, deep inside, he knew it was more than that. The girl nodded, her eyes softening. "My stepmother always said no one would ever want me," she whispered. "She said I was broken, a curse, something to throw away." Tears welled up in her glowing eyes. "But you didn't throw me away." Daniel felt something stir inside him, something he thought he had buried forever. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. "You are not broken," he said, his voice low but fierce. "Don't let anyone tell you that." Lyra's lips trembled, and for the first time a faint smile touched her face. She leaned against him, small and fragile. But in that moment, Daniel felt stronger than he had in years. The bond between them was not blood, but it was real. and it was growing stronger with every heartbeat. But outside the cave, danger still crept closer. The sound of boots striking the earth echoed faintly. The patrols were moving through the forest, methodical and relentless. Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they found tracks, and once they did, there would be no escape. Lyra stirred suddenly, her hands glowing faintly again. Daniel frowned, watching her. She did not notice it herself, but her body glimmered whenever she was afraid. "Stop that glow," he whispered sharply. "I can't," she whispered back, panic in her voice. "It happens on its own." Daniel cursed under his breath. The glow would give them away if soldiers came near. He pulled her closer to him, wrapping his jacket around her. "Then you stay hidden in this," he said firmly. His mind raced with plans, but each one ended in risk. Suddenly, the sound of voices came closer. Harsh, metallic voices speaking through helmets. Daniel's muscles tightened, his hand gripping the knife again. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Lyra to stay silent. The fire flickered low, the shadows deepened. The patrols were right outside the cave now. Lyra's breath caught in her throat, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel's hand rested on his knife, ready to fight. If they found the cave, there would be no talking, only blood. And in that moment, Daniel realized something terrifying. The choice he had made was not just about saving a child. It was about defying an enemy far greater than he imagined. The cave walls trembled with each step of the armored patrol. Daniel pressed his back against the stone, his knife in hand, his breath low and steady. Beside him, Lyra clutched the pendant at her chest, her silver hair hidden under his jacket. Her small frame shook, but she stayed silent, trusting him. Outside, voices spoke in harsh tones. "They are near," one soldier growled through his helmet. "The girl cannot have gone far," said another. Their searchlights swept across the clearing, beams of white cutting through the night. The shadows of their weapons stretched long and thin across the cave walls. Daniel's heart pounded. If they looked closer, if they pulled the vines aside, the cave would no longer hide them. He glanced at Lyra, her glowing eyes wide with fear. He mouthed one word: "Run." She shook her head quickly, but he gave her a sharp look, his meaning clear. Suddenly, the vines were pushed aside, and blinding light flooded the cave. "There!" a soldier shouted, raising his weapon. Daniel did not hesitate. He lunged forward, slashing at the nearest soldier's leg, sending him crashing to the ground. Energy blasts fired, sizzling against the stone walls, the cave filled with smoke and sparks. "Go, Lyra!" Daniel roared. Lyra scrambled out, her bare feet hitting the cold ground as she ran into the forest. Daniel followed, deflecting a shot with his knife, the energy burning his arm. He gritted his teeth and forced himself forward. His only thought, on keeping her alive. The forest erupted with chaos. Searchlights cut through the trees, beams chasing them as they fled. The sound of heavy boots thundered behind them. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her through the undergrowth. Branches whipped his face, roots caught at his boots, but he did not stop. "Faster," he urged. Lyra gasped for breath, her small legs struggling to keep up. But then her hands began to glow again, bright and wild. "No!" Daniel hissed, pulling her hood tighter. "They'll see the light." But it was too late. The glow flared, and the patrols shouted, "There! The target is marked!" Shots fired, blasting holes in the trees around them. Lyra cried out as the ground exploded near her feet, throwing her off balance. Daniel scooped her into his arms and ran harder. His muscles burned, but he pushed forward, weaving between the trees. The forest predators had returned too, their glowing eyes watching from the darkness. The chaos of hunters and beasts made the night more dangerous than ever. Daniel slid down a hill, clutching Lyra tight. They crashed through brush and landed in a shallow stream. The icy water splashed around them, soaking their clothes. Daniel's knife slipped from his belt. Carried away by the current, cursing, he pulled Lyra to her feet, her teeth chattering from the cold. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll never stop hunting me." Daniel crouched low, listening to the distant shouts and the hum of weapons. Her words struck deep. He realized this was no short chase. By saving her, he had placed himself in a war he did not yet understand. He grabbed a thick branch from the ground, gripping it like a weapon. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me," he said, his voice steady and fierce. Lyra looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. In that moment, she didn't see a stranger. She saw the father she had begged for. The chase grew louder again, lights flashing across the stream. Daniel pulled Lyra behind a fallen log, holding her close. The soldiers marched nearby, their armor clanking, their voices sharp. "She cannot escape this time," one hissed. "Orders are clear. Kill the human if he resists." Daniel's grip on the branch tightened. His heart hammered, but his eyes were calm. He would not abandon her, not now, not ever. A twig snapped behind them. Daniel spun, swinging the branch, but instead of a soldier, a predator leapt from the shadows, its jaws wide. Lyra screamed, and instinct took over. Her pendant glowed with blinding light. A burst of energy exploded outward, slamming the predator into a tree. The forest fell silent for a breath. Even the soldiers stopped, turning their heads toward the light. "There, the girl has revealed herself," one shouted. Weapons charged, the forest now alive with deadly hums. Daniel pulled Lyra up, his eyes sharp. "Run again," he ordered. She looked at him, her face pale. "I can't. I'm too tired," she whispered. Her small body shook. With exhaustion, her glowing hands dimming, Daniel lifted her into his arms again, ignoring the burning pain in his muscles. He pushed forward, deeper into the forest. Blasts of energy lit the night behind them, cutting down trees, shaking the earth. The soldiers were closing in, faster, stronger, and merciless. But Daniel's mind was clear now. This was not just survival anymore. This was a promise he had made the moment she asked. "Be my dad," she had said. And he had chosen. He would not let anyone take her from him. The forest stretched on endlessly, shadows and light twisting together. Daniel's steps slowed, his body weakening. Yet when he looked down at Lyra, clinging to him with trust and fear, a fire burned inside him. He pushed forward into the unknown, even as the hunters closed in, and then, through the darkness, Daniel saw it, far ahead, hidden among the trees, the faint glow of old ruins, stone walls broken by time, carved with strange symbols. Perhaps shelter, perhaps danger, but it was the only chance they had. He gritted his teeth and ran toward the ruins, the sound of pursuit louder than ever. The hunters were coming, and the real battle was only beginning. The ruins loomed before them, tall stone arches cracked by time and covered in vines. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, pulsing. With light as if alive, Daniel slowed his steps, carrying Lyra into the shadows of the ancient place. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but he refused to stop. Behind them, the voices of the hunters still echoed. Their armored boots struck the ground like drums of war, their lights flashing through the forest. But for a moment, inside the ruins, there was silence. Only the whisper of the wind moved through the broken corridors. Daniel set Lyra down gently against a stone wall, her small body trembling with exhaustion. "Rest here," he said softly. Lyra shook her head weakly, her silver hair sticking to her damp cheeks. "They will come," she whispered. "They always come." Daniel crouched, gripping her shoulders, his eyes steady. "Then we'll be ready," he said. His voice carried no doubt, even though his heart knew the odds were slim. As Lyra leaned back, the pendant on her chest began to glow brighter. The light spread across, the ruins touching the ancient carvings on the stone. Symbols lit up one by one, filling the chamber with a soft blue glow. Daniel stepped back, his hand tightening around his branch weapon. "What is this?" he muttered. Lyra stared at the glowing walls, her lips parting in awe and fear. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I feel it. I feel it calling me." She stood shakily, her small hands brushing across the symbols. As she touched one, the ground beneath them rumbled. A faint hum filled the air, and the ruins seemed to wake from a long sleep. Daniel's jaw clenched, his instincts screaming that they had stepped into something far older than themselves. Lyra turned toward him, her glowing eyes wide. "My stepmother fears this," she said softly. "She said I was cursed because of what I carry. But I think it is something more." Daniel frowned, his mind racing. Her stepmother was powerful, cruel, and ruthless. If she had gone to such lengths to banish and hunt Lyra, then the girl was no ordinary child. And these ruins, alive with her touch, proved it. Suddenly Lyra gasped and collapsed to her knees. The pendant blazed with light and a projection appeared above it, a figure made of shimmering energy. It was tall, elegant, and alien. Its face blurred but its voice clear. "To the one who carries the bloodline, you are the key," it spoke. "The power you hold will shape the fate of your people." Daniel froze, his heart hammering. He looked at Lyra, her small body trembling as the light wrapped around her. The voice continued. "You are not cursed, child, you are chosen, the last of the true line." The image flickered and vanished, the chamber falling into silence again. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My stepmother, she said I was nothing. She said I was weak." Daniel knelt before her, his hand steady on her shoulder. "She lied," he said firmly. "You are more than she ever wanted you to know. That's why she fears you." Lyra clung to him, her small body shaking with sobs. For the first time she saw herself not as a curse but as something precious. And for the first time, Daniel's heart fully accepted the truth. He was no longer just a wanderer protecting a stranger. He was a father, protecting his daughter. But their moment of quiet was shattered. The sound of stone cracking echoed through the ruins. From the archway, armored soldiers stepped in, weapons raised, their lights blinding in the glowing chamber. "There they are," one shouted. "Seize the girl. Kill the human." Daniel rose to his feet, standing between Lyra and the soldiers. His branch weapon felt small compared to their rifles, but his eyes were cold and sharp. "You'll have to go through me first," he growled. The soldiers moved closer, their armor clanking, their weapons aimed. Daniel's muscles tensed, ready to fight to the last breath. But before the first shot could fire, the ruins answered. The carvings on the walls flared brighter, a wave of light rushing outward. The soldiers staggered, their weapons flickering as if drained of power. Lyra stood again, her hands glowing, brighter than ever. The ruins seemed to feed her strength, the light rising like fire in her veins. Daniel turned, his eyes widening. She no longer looked fragile. She looked powerful, radiant, almost untouchable. The soldiers hesitated, their fear clear even through their helmets. "She is awakening," one muttered. "We must call the commander," another said, their voices edged with panic. Daniel looked at his daughter, his voice low but steady. "Lyra, whatever you do, don't stop." Lyra lifted her glowing hands, her voice trembling but strong. "I am not cursed," she whispered. Her light burst outward, shaking the ruins. The soldiers fell back, blinded and stunned by the energy. Daniel shielded his eyes, but he could feel the power pouring from her like a storm. When the light faded, the soldiers were scattered on the ground, their weapons sparking and broken. Lyra swayed, her strength nearly gone. Daniel caught her before she could fall, holding her close, her eyes fluttered, her voice weak. "Dad, what if I can't control it?" Daniel pulled her against his chest, his voice calm. "Then I'll be here to help you, always." The ruins grew quiet again, the glow fading slowly. But Daniel knew the truth now. Her stepmother feared this secret because it was powerful enough to change everything. And now that secret was awake. Outside, a distant horn sounded. Reinforcements were coming. More soldiers, more danger. Daniel held Lyra close and whispered, "We have to move now." He lifted her in his arms, stepping over the broken stone. Behind them, the ruins pulsed faintly, as if watching them leave. The secret of the past was revealed. But it was only the beginning, because now the galaxy would come for her. The ruins faded into the distance as Daniel carried Lyra through the forest. Her head rested against his chest, her silver hair damp with sweat, her small body weak after releasing so much power. But her hands still glowed faintly, like embers that refused to die. Daniel's legs ached, but he did not slow. He knew reinforcements would come. The sound of horns and the echo of armored boots haunted the night behind them. They needed shelter, somewhere safe, at least for a little while. Hours later, the forest opened to a small village. Simple wooden homes stood beneath, the glow of tall lanterns. People moved about quietly, their eyes tired but wary. Daniel pulled his hood low, keeping Lyra hidden against him. He approached the nearest villager, an old man with skin as pale as ash and eyes glowing faintly yellow. "Please," Daniel said, his voice rough from exhaustion. "We need food and a place to rest." The old man studied him, then glanced at the girl's small hand poking from Daniel's jacket, glowing faintly blue. Fear flickered in his eyes, but he nodded slowly. "Follow me," he whispered. They were led to a small hut at the edge of the village. Inside, the air was warm, and a fire burned in the hearth. Daniel laid Lyra down on a blanket, brushing her damp hair from her forehead. She stirred weakly, whispering, "Are we safe, Dad?" Daniel paused at the word, but only for a moment. "Yes," he said firmly. "For now." The old man brought bread and water, setting them down quietly. He looked at Lyra again, then back at Daniel. "Be careful," he said, his voice low. "Your enemies are powerful. If the wrong ears hear you are here, the whole village may suffer." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "I understand." For a brief moment there was peace. Lyra ate slowly, sipping water, her strength returning little by little. Daniel sat near, the fire sharpening a small blade he had taken from a fallen soldier. The warmth of the room, the soft crackle of the fire, the faint smile on Lyra's face. It all felt almost normal, almost like home, but peace never lasted. In the shadows outside, whispers spread. Strangers had entered, one of them glowing, and fear made tongues quick. By dawn, word had already reached the wrong ears. The betrayal came quietly. Daniel awoke to the sound of footsteps outside the hut. He grabbed his knife and crouched low, his eyes sharp. The door creaked open and the old man entered again, but this time he was not alone. 2 armored soldiers stepped in behind him, their weapons raised. Daniel's heart sank. "You," he growled at the old man. The villager lowered his eyes, shame and fear on his face. "I am sorry," he whispered. "They threatened us all. If I did not tell them, they would burn the village," Lyra gasped, scrambling to Daniel's side. The soldiers aimed their rifles, their voices cold. "Step aside, human. The girl belongs to us." Daniel placed himself in front of Lyra. Knife, ready. "You'll have to kill me first," he said, his voice steady. The soldiers moved closer, weapons humming with deadly energy. But before they could strike, Lyra stepped forward, her small hands trembling but glowing brighter. "No," Daniel hissed, grabbing her arm. But Lyra's eyes burned with determination. "I won't let them hurt you," she said firmly, her voice stronger than before. The soldiers fired, blasts of energy tearing through the hut. Daniel pulled Lyra to the ground, the air filling with smoke and fire. He slashed at one soldier's leg, sending him crashing down, but the other seized Lyra's arm, yanking her up. She screamed, her pendant glowing bright. The entire hut shook as light exploded outward. The roof splintered, the walls cracked. Villagers outside screamed and ran. The soldier holding her was thrown across the ground, his armor sparking. But in the chaos, more patrols swarmed into the village, their horns blaring. Daniel grabbed Lyra, dragging her through the back of the hut. Flames spread quickly, houses burning as soldiers stormed the streets. The village was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a battlefield. Villagers shouted, some begging the soldiers for mercy, others fleeing into the woods. And above it all, one voice rang out. Cold, commanding, familiar. "Bring the girl to me." Daniel froze at the sound. From the center of the village, stepping through the fire and smoke, came a tall figure in dark armor. Her face was pale, sharp, her eyes burning with cruelty. Lyra's stepmother. Lyra's breath caught, her whole body shaking. Stepmother, she whispered in terror. Daniel tightened his grip on her hand, pulling her behind him. The woman's gaze landed on them, and her lips curved into a cruel smile. You cannot hide her, human, she said, her voice cold as steel. She is mine, and you are nothing. Daniel's jaw clenched, his heart burning with rage. He raised his knife, though it felt small compared to her power. She's not yours, he growled. She's my daughter now. The stepmother laughed, a sound, sharp and cruel. Your daughter? Foolish man, do you even know what she is? Her words cut like a blade, but Daniel stood firm. Behind him, Lyra clung to his sleeve, tears shining in her glowing eyes. He looked down at her, then back at the woman. I don't care what she is, he said. She is mine to protect. The stepmother raised her hand, power sparking like lightning in her palm. The soldiers closed in, circling them. Daniel tightened his stance, his knife ready. Lyra's glow grew brighter, her small hands trembling as she prepared to unleash her strength again. The village burned, the night roared with chaos, and in that fiery storm, father and daughter stood together, facing the one who had cast her away, the one who would stop at nothing to destroy her. The village burned like a sea of fire. Flames licked the sky, smoke rolled across the ground, and screams echoed through the night. In the center of the chaos stood Daniel, knife in hand, shielding Lyra with his body. Across from them, her stepmother raised a hand glowing with deadly power, her soldiers forming a circle around them. You dare to defy me, human? The stepmother hissed, her eyes sharp as blades. She is mine. She always has been. Her voice cut through the crackling flames, but Daniel did not flinch. He stood tall, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. She is not yours, he said firmly. She's my daughter now. Lyra clutched Daniel's sleeve, trembling but refusing to hide behind him this time. Her silver hair shimmered in the firelight, her glowing eyes fixed on the woman who had tormented her. For years she had been told she was worthless, a curse, something to be discarded. But, standing beside Daniel, she no longer felt weak. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. The stepmother's lips curved into a cruel smile. Then you will die with her, she spat, with a wave of her hand. Lightning burst from her palm, ripping through the air. Daniel pulled Lyra down just in time as the blast shattered the ground where they had stood. The earth cracked, sparks flying everywhere. Soldiers moved in, weapons humming. But Daniel fought. With the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose, he slashed one soldier across the throat, grabbed another by the arm and hurled him into the fire. But for everyone he struck down, more closed in. Their armor shining, their blades flashing. Lyra's hands began to glow brighter, her pendant pulsing wildly. She screamed, and a wave of light shot outward, knocking soldiers to the ground. The stepmother staggered back, shielding her face from the brilliance. Her voice roared over the chaos. Foolish child, you cannot control it. You will destroy yourself and everything around you. Daniel grabbed Lyra's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Don't listen to her, he said firmly, his eyes burning with conviction. You are not cursed. You are strong, stronger than she will ever be. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps, tears in her glowing eyes. But what if she's right? What if I hurt you? Daniel shook his head, his grip steady. Then I'll still be here. I'll never leave you. Do you hear me? Never. His words cut through her fear like a blade through chains. Lyra clenched her small fists, her glow burning hotter, brighter, fiercer. The stepmother snarled, raising both hands, power surging around her like a storm. The ground split, the air cracked, fire and lightning twisting together. She hurled it forward, a wave of pure destruction meant to end them both. Daniel wrapped his arms around Lyra, shielding her with his body. But Lyra screamed, her pendant bursting with blinding light. A dome of shimmering energy exploded outward, swallowing the storm and hurling it back. The shockwave shook the entire village, knocking soldiers off their feet, tearing flames into the sky. When the light faded, the stepmother lay on the ground, her armor cracked, her body trembling. Her soldiers crawled back in fear, their weapons broken, their courage shattered. Daniel stood tall, holding Lyra's hand, their silhouettes outlined by the fading glow. The stepmother coughed, blood on her lips. You don't understand," she rasped. "She is too dangerous. The galaxy will never accept her." Her voice was weak, but her eyes still burned with venom. Daniel stepped forward, his knife in hand, his voice sharp and unyielding. "No, you don't understand," he said coldly. "She's not dangerous, she's hope, and she's mine." He raised the blade, but Lyra grabbed his arm, shaking her head. "Don't," she whispered, her eyes soft. "She's already lost. Killing her won't change anything." Daniel's grip tightened, his rage burning, but when he looked at Lyra, he saw something greater. Mercy, strength, and the heart of someone who was not broken but whole. Slowly, he lowered the knife. The stepmother's eyes widened in disbelief. You spare me?" she hissed. Lyra stepped forward, her small voice trembling but strong. "I am not your curse," she said. "I am not your prisoner. I am free. And I am not alone anymore." The stepmother's face twisted with rage and fear as the soldiers dragged her away, broken and defeated. The villagers emerged from hiding, staring at the girl who glowed like a star beside the human man. Whispers spread, of power, of hope, of something greater than fear. Daniel placed his hand on Lyra's shoulder, steady and warm. "You did it," he said softly, pride in his voice. Lyra looked up at him, her lips trembling into a small smile. "No, Dad, we did it." For the first time, Daniel let himself smile back. For years he had wandered, broken and empty, but now, with Lyra's hand in his, he felt whole again. He had lost a daughter once, but fate had given him another. Not by blood, but by choice, by bond, by love. As the smoke cleared, Daniel looked out into the horizon. He knew this was not the end. Others would come, enemies who feared Lyra's power. The galaxy would not ignore what had awakened tonight. But he no longer feared the future, because no matter what came, they would face it together. A broken wanderer and a banished girl, a father and a daughter. Two souls bound not by chance, but by something far stronger. The flames of the village burned behind them, but ahead lay the endless stars. And with every step they took, the legend of the human father and the alien girl began to grow. A story that would one day shake the galaxy, the end, or the beginning.